G'day. We're leaving from a Zone Execution today by a sexy space tomato. Hey, I saw those eyebrows. Don't you
I'm in a
worry.
digital space.
You're in a digital space. You finally learned to set up a green screen. That's
Yeah.
good. No, that's good. So what are we going to talk about today, Space? I know it, but I want to hear you say it.
Master modes?
No, see you're baiting me. I'm not going to do that. Anyway, no, we're talking about what we expect for this year. So, what are our expectations? Me and you and Algrid, I think, did this talk last year, and I brought it up several times over the course of the year. So I wanted to sit down and have it again. But long story short, yeah, I know you've done a video on this. I was trying to get Paul here for this one as well, but he just we had a timing conflict, so we couldn't get Paul here as well. But yeah. So knowing that you had done a video and Paul had done a video, I knew it would be fresh in your minds and we could sit down and talk about it. But yeah, that's long story short. So I'll let you take it off. What are the basics? What are they doing right now? And we were talking a little bit before about they're obviously planning this year. What do you think they're planning?
Well, I got to ask first how we did last year.
I think we were pretty much on the money.
Really?
We essentially went, they're going to take the foundational stuff of Squadron, pull that across, and then they're going to start to build the foundational stuff for Star Citizen. And
I'm betting I was more optimistic than the year ended up being. Like because like this time last year, I was thinking we'd be seeing quantum travel rework probably. I was thinking we would see more stuff that had to do with scanning. I thought hacking would definitely show up, at least in the preview channel. So like I think last year fell short of my expectations, but I think they did a decent job.
Yeah, look, I would agree with that. I thought they'd be a bit further along than they are, but obviously they've had teething issues with server meshing. And I still think, ironically, this year will be more server meshing. Let's be honest though, it's running a lot better than it was, a couple of months back. And obviously we're having the TV issues with the 4.0 preview and now the 4.0.1 preview. But it's getting better. And I think the last kind of big step before we can see all this new stuff like base building and all that that's going to come after it, and engineering and all that type of thing, is the dynamic server meshing. And let's be honest, that's no small feat. I think that's the other thing. Like we kind of, I remember thinking like, oh yeah, server meshing will take like a year, and I think we're at like 3 years in at this point. So it's taken a really long time to crack that code.
I know for a fact they've been at the very least messing with the tech for it since like 2018. But
yeah,
it's funny to go back to the 2022 letter from the chairman, where it prophetically told us that server meshing would be in testing by the end of that year. But when they did, they mentioned that it would be hitting like the preview kind of stuff, EPTU, whatever, around, I think they were saying November, December, and they were thinking it would probably hit live within by the end of the next quarter, so March. So they were thinking from the point when you started testing server meshing, they'd be about 5 months out from live, and they actually got that this time. I'll say it was a bit rushed, clearly, but at the very least, at least their testing period didn't overrun like crazy. And I'm glad that it didn't end up being like 3.18. But I think the launch of server meshing both slowed down last year's development. It will probably slow down this year's development too, but that's kind of, you got to account for that. I mean, it's new tech. It's gonna slow things down.
That was kind of an Inforunner, well, me and Algrid, that was probably a thing that happened a lot to me and Algrid last year, was best laid plans. Just went completely awry. And I think it was no different for CIG in that regard. But now we've got the dynamic there. I don't think it's as much of a bigger step to get to, now we've got static there. I don't think it's as big a step to get to dynamic as it was to get to where we are now. So hopefully they've already been working on that tech in the background. And I know Benoit talked to that effect. He just wanted to go straight to dynamic. He didn't want to do static. So hopefully they get the dynamic in. And once that's behind us, clearly base building, like we talked about last year, will be one of the fundamentals, as will be engineering, because you can clearly see it permeates into other things. So Buildings are obviously a part of the room system. They're another category like vehicles or ships now as well. And so when you make one thing, you can essentially, like, so say I made something medical, I can permeate that across all the rooms, all the ships, all the vehicles. And so therefore you're not having to come back and redo things. You can just roll it out.
The dynamic server meshing is a big part of it all. And I remember Benoit was talking about how he wanted to go straight to that, because I think most people who have been following this pretty closely at this point know that the static server meshing is more expensive. And
Yep.
what we will probably see on display this week is going to prove just how much we need it when the Daymar rally tries to launch with 500 plus people, and we all go into the same area and see how a static server won't be able to handle that stuff. So we're at this point where we've reached a plateau, I think, technologically speaking. Even from what Benoit was saying last year, dynamic server meshing, like you just said, isn't as big a jump as no server meshing to static, but it is, like, when it comes to industry first, the dynamic server meshing here would be the actual industry first, not the server meshing we're seeing now. And so it might not be as big a leap, but technologically speaking, it's sort of like I don't want to say landing on the moon moment, but it's a very significant moment, regardless of how hard it is for them. And I don't know if that's going to happen this year. They make it sound like they want it to, but I'm also very conscious of the suspicious silence surrounding server meshing after it's finally gone live. I guess technically it's early January, so I'll give them that. But I expected there to be some messaging about, like, okay, this is how it went in PTU, and now we're live, and here's what's going on.
So I'll ask the question then. Where the hopeful and realistic. So where do you hope static server meshing will land, and where do you realistically think it'll land, if you had to guess? And it is just a guess.
Dynamic server meshing?
Yeah, dynamic.
I hope it lands in freaking Q1 of 2025, okay? 4.1 dynamic server meshing. I want to be playing in a full regional server. Make it happen.
Yeah.
That's
but realistically, when you
promised, execute. Realistically,
you're going to be sooner rather than later, or do you reckon it's? Or do you reckon it's? Yeah, that's what I mean. Do you reckon it's going to be end of year, or do you reckon it's like mid-year, or like when do you think it's going to drop?
I have I have literally nothing to determine my guess. Absolutely. Sometimes I'd pick some little bit of info they put in a monthly report, but what was that, Google?
Someone my backdoor doorbell. It's
okay.
It's Monday here, so the Google packages start arriving.
I see. What was I going to say? Google, why'd you do this? I can't remember now.
Google. Sorry. Blame Google.
Oh,
right. Long story short. No, go ahead.
I definitely feel like we have, like, basically opened and closed a door almost. Like server meshing 4.0, rather, not server meshing. 4.0 was like this door that we couldn't really see past. We've just had our freaking tunnel vision since 2018. 4.0 server meshing. We're gonna get there. And not to say that, like, it's the ultimate goal of the game and everything's done after that, but they've slowly started to introduce the new sort of stuff after that.
Yep.
Star Citizen 1.0, base building and crafting, the new star systems. But when it comes down to, like, your quarterly production, the stuff that we would see in our Inside Star Citizens and things, we haven't seen anything on that past 4.0. So we don't know anything about their direction or ideas feature-wise besides the sandworm, the base building, which has been confirmed 12 to 18 months, and then the stuff they showed at CitizenCon, which we have no freaking clue, and that could be 5 years away for all we know. So I have trouble determining what they might do this year, dynamic server meshing related, feature related, even ship related to some extent, because that video they showed us was only the ships they're working on in the next 12 months, not releasing. So the only thing I think we can...
As ships go, that was the most gentle silhouette video I've ever seen. What I mean by that, it was like there was nothing in it that was really new. There was like 2 ships in it that actually had any kind of weight.
Yeah.
Everything else was variants or stuff that we already kind of knew about. Like, well, for example, 2 of the ships were Hornet variants, things like that. So it was just like, Yeah.
Seeing things from the backlog is good. I think a lot of people appreciate that, especially ships like the Apollo, which is very loved.
What I mean though is they shouldn't have been on a silhouette video for upcoming preview. Like they were obviously coming. Once the F7A was out, the other one
Look,
that
hey,
we need is the
you know
Super
what?
Hornet, obviously.
I'll take it. If they want to have their little hype session with ships, I'd rather they do it with ships that already exist.
Yeah.
So I'm down for that. But I don't know. We don't know what they're doing. The only thing we can say with any confidence that they're doing is what they've talked about, which is trying to make the game more playable.
Yeah.
And I think that's valiant.
I think we can also look at what they were planning to do too. So, like, you essentially look at it and go, well, engineering's got to come in. The base building's coming in. So this is what's after static, right? And base building's no small feat, right? That's a pretty big thing. Like working on things like the Pioneer, you don't do that lightly, right? So I'd also expect the ships that there be a new base building ship, maybe under. Excuse me. You got the build obviously coming. I think the build, like we had a couple of devs say to me in our grid at CitizenCon that base building is a lot closer than you think. And if you just look at the build as an example, right, they never sold a CCU for it. Right, they've never given us the price on the ship. They were planning to release that thing at CitizenCon, but it just didn't land where they wanted it to land. And so
I'm surprised.
That's just the history of way. So that's not just CIG, that's game development as a whole, right? Best laid plans go awry. That's just how it is. So
we all have concepts for plans, right?
Yeah. And it obviously didn't land, and something went wrong with the server meshing or whatever, and so it got knocked back, and they've also had to strip features out. You know where we are now. So, but I'm thinking when they get this all fixed, then we get the build, and base building is probably closer than we think. So we'll just have to wait and see.
I could see, they said 12 to 18 months, which I appreciate because that at least feels a little bit more reserved than just saying next year. Well, so I think you're right.
I think they're very careful with dates now and give way too much time now. I think they've gone the other way, where before they were way too hopeful, and they'll go, 12 months to make a fucking rocket, and no.
Well, that's what I'm saying, man. And they've hit this point where we don't know what's happening. We don't know. Normally at CitizenCon, they would tell us something, or at the last ISC, they'd tell us something, some kind of look ahead. The only thing they're talking about is we want to make it playable. We want to make it feel better. And we don't have to believe that that's going to happen. But I do think that we're in a different place than we normally are going into a new year.
In a weird way, there is a way you can kind of tell some things, right? One of the things I noticed when we were at CitizenCon, not all, but there was things that were in-game, and then there were things that were slides. There were way more slides this year, where you almost can tell that they were wanting to talk about 4.0 or the release of 4.0. Because it didn't happen, they had to pivot and talk about other things. And so that's where there was lots of slides and stuff. Like, and a lot of the stuff they showed off, like the actual space stations, was really early stuff. So you can tell they've had to pivot and turn to other things to essentially fill out CitizenCon. But
what do you think they were going to talk about 4.0 posthumously?
I think things like the base building. Think about the base building stuff they showed off. That was all in game and working.
Yeah.
Right. So but by the same token, a lot of the other stuff, like the weapon, like say the economy stuff,
the whole social panel.
The whole social panel was on slides. Because that's all future stuff, right? So again, the fact that it was in game and working, a lot of the AI stuff was in game and working. Again, I think that's just all behind you would admit now, just going from normal servers to static, how much better is the AI now?
Oh, it's great. Well, okay, it's not great. It's much better.
But it's much better, right? And then, and at what level is that going to go to when you get to dynamic? You know what I mean? So I think now it's moving forward, I think that was all part of their best laid plans. So I look at a lot of the stuff that was actually working at CitizenCon, and I have to assume, I don't know if I'm correct, I could be wrong, that because that was in and working, once the dynamic is in, a lot of that will come into the game afterwards. And like, how much of can the AI do a bit of engineering? Can the AI do a bit of base building?
I'm trying to, and I'm trying to think about those sort of features in different categories from one another, because I feel like there are some systems that I could definitely see coming in the next year. But at the same time, I also think that, well, I think the things that they need to focus on are definitely how playable the game is. And that's not to say just fix bugs. It's just not a game experience. Like, I'm fully on board with the whole, we got to make it a little bit like there's got to be some level of learning you have to do to get there, but the game itself makes it very hard to learn things. It makes, like, just down to not having FPS scanning is a huge detriment for people who want to go out to a place and be able to literally scan an object and know what it is, what it's for, is it interactable, those kinds of little things. Or like, dude, if you jump into a spaceship, you have no freaking clue that you have to do 2 different mode changes just to be able to quantum travel.
Well, that's one of the things they're talking about too, is that'll change a bit too, essentially.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of, like, again, it's like master modes as an example, real quickly, is it's an in-between stage problem, right? As they transition between 2 things.
And they've always had the problem where you can't really make tutorials for that kind of stuff because it's changing.
Yep, and it's like you said too. Scanning is also another thing that's coming. That was in with the engineering and the base building as well. So that's definitely on the list as well. And I've said for years now, as yourself, that scanning is the one real thing we need to kick this game off, because then you can get that core gameplay loop going. But yeah, like, I would be hopeful that we finally get these this year. Just based on the fact that a lot of that was talked about at the end of last year. I think we might also possibly finally get things like bounty hunting that they talked about 2 years ago now. Do you remember that ISC with them pushing the trolleys around?
Yeah.
They talked about the Hawk being reworked, stuff like that. So that also leads into bounty hunting. I do, there's other little telltale things that we learned too, like how all ships take about 18 months to come in from the time that they started till they come in. So, you can now see that we'll probably get things like the Apollo, the Raelian should possibly be on queue for Alien Week, things like that. So now we know little things that not just Algrid and I learned, but other people learned as well at CitizenCon, and how things work. Me and Algrid really went in with wanting to know things that we just hadn't known for years. And there was a lot that we'd speculated on that they said to us, yeah, you're dead on. Your speculation was 100% correct. And then there'll be other things that said, oh, you were off. But in most of the stuff that me and Algrid had theorized, we were pretty damn close. I was really surprised by how much we'd got right. Long story short, I think it's going to be a good year. I think it is going to turn a little bit and become a little bit more, like, once we get dynamic out, I think it's going to, I'm not going to, we've always called it breaking of the dam. I don't think it'll be this huge floodgates, but I think it will be, how you kind of said 4.0 was this blinding moment. I think because 4.0 isn't kind of essentially out, I actually kind of see it more with this the dynamic, not the static. And I think once that's in, it's one of the things we've learned about CIG. They don't ever want to do something if they're going to have to redo it. And so until the dynamic is out, there's just all these things that have kind of been designed for it. So we've got to, as you said, they've just kind of got to get pushed through, get to there, and then I think a lot more things will be waiting in the wings to come in, because they work in different teams, and unfortunately that server meshing team only have the people that they have.
I think this all makes sense in a vacuum, but it's also worth noting the position that they're in as a company.
Yeah.
They're lagging a little bit behind with Squadron. I think they really probably wanted that to be out this year. And
Agreed.
So we have this sort of in-between year.
I went all the way to the UK thinking it was coming out. So yeah, I definitely thought, we were told that it was coming, and then like 2 weeks after we booked our tickets, the gala got cancelled, and we're like, oh, it ain't coming anymore. So
yeah. So I think that there's probably some heavy consciousness, and they haven't released their financials yet this year. I think it's a little late. We'll check those out soon, but I think there's a little.
Usually they come out in like December.
The second.
I wonder if it was because it was all hands on deck. That was one of the things I heard from devs after I got back, was that everyone was trying to get 4.0 out the door before the holidays. Like everybody. I even think that there's other telltale signs, like how the Guardian came out and the 2 variants were too similar. I think they were meant to be a bit more different, things like that, but they just ran out of time. They just pushed it out how it was.
So I think that was the setup for 24. But
Mm.
in terms of the company's overall health, like Squadron's no doubt going to be a big injection for them funding wise. And I do wonder to myself, you guys need to simultaneously make this game play better. Not just glitches, but like in terms of how the content performs and how players experience the game, especially in that new player format. They also need to make sure that they're enticing people with new features and ships still, because they still got to fund this year because Squadron's not going to be here.
Do you think that
So
they have realized that the quality of the game and people playing it is also tied to funding?
oh, I think they've known that. They had to have known. I mean, it's if we can see it, they can see it. Come on, like
They can. They can.
That's been true since I remember when they added baby persistence, and I always say yes, it was 2020, so pandemic and all that, but I wholly believe that when this game became persistent, to the sense that you didn't get your progress wiped every 3 months,
Yeah.
I think their funding reached a new level because that just opened the door for a whole new type of person to come play. And we could see the same type of thing happen when they reach, I don't know, not like full on, real stability kind of. And it's true when you look at the last year's funding, the year before that, like when the game is doing well and when people can jump in and get excited and have more fun, that's generally when the funding and the numbers joining goes up.
No, I agree 100%.
Yeah, I'm excited for this year because it feels like we finally have the game being made instead of just the engine. But I'm also a little nervous, and I would say I have anxiety about how much we can actually see the game improve overall. They've got multiple game loops to hit. They've got locations to hit. They've got missions to hit.
I guess
it's a hefty load.
I guess a kind of slight negative for me is that when I kind of really sit down and think about it, one of the things I realized at CitizenCon, as did our group, was there wasn't really anything new. Everything they kind of showed was just an advancement on stuff they already had. Like, so essentially, to give an example, the space station space was just an expansion of base building, right? They showed new planetary tech, so the next level of planetary tech. They didn't come out and say, we're going to be doing this gameplay. They just went, this is the expansions of all this stuff, right? And that shows that they've been working on them. But it's like you said earlier, it's really hard to find anything that's new that's coming. It's just more reinforcement of what they're already working on. So what I'm trying to say is I'm relating to what you said earlier about it is really hard to find a direction of where they're going. All you can really say is they're working more on what they're already doing, which is a good and a bad thing. You know what I mean? Like, because it means we're just getting more of the same. Is it going to be a quiet year because we're just getting more of the same?
I don't know. I don't think so. I still think that the idea that if this game was stable, it would be a very fun game to play. I think that in itself would make noise. Like, it won't be a quiet year if they just focused entirely on missions and fixing things. I think it would be a stellar year for them. The problem with that beforehand was like doing that before server meshing felt really dumb, because imagine if they had gotten all the missions and stuff figured out for the pre-server meshing system, and they made it run perfectly and spent all that time, and then we launched server meshing with 4.0, and now all the missions were broken again, instead of wasting that time before they got to work on some other stuff. So I do think that there's, I don't even remember where I was going with this. I lost my train of thought.
You are tired, sir. You are tired, sir. I'll give you that one.
Long day. It's a Monday.
Yeah.
But I think that overall, they've got their hands full.
Yeah.
And I don't envy them on that. I wish that at Star Citizen 1... God, Google, leave us alone.
Sorry.
I wish that at Star Citizen 1.0 panel, they had laid out like the full game loop, like you were saying, of mining and stuff like that. But I genuinely think that the stuff that they're showing us, while it might not feel that new, it's incorporating new aspects. Like, if they do get crafting into the game, okay, this would change the way we salvage because we're looking for different things. It'd change the way we mine because we're looking for different things. It would encourage people to explore. people would be exploring and finding locations. And I think that's one of the big things they also need to add this year is
Yep.
do an extra little polish up on the star map, but give us the ability to save locations.
Yeah.
Because those aren't new, they're not amazing, but those would have a cataclysmic effect on how the game runs.
I think all the gameplay systems we've mentioned, like engineering, base building, scanning, and all that, they hit every ship in the game. Or gameplay, right? Because obviously base building is a little different. But yeah, you're right. It is, like I said, it is an expanding of stuff that we already have, but in a really positive way. So yeah, I don't know.
As far as like a tent pole addition this year, if they just got crafting and base building in as like their big feature of the year, and then they were able to have other supporting features to that, like in improving the scattering of resource spawning or implementing the ability for people to like craft all of the items that we're using, like just supporting features behind crafting and base building, I think would make this a pretty big year. Everything else not being considered.
I guess we'll put this up to the audience then. What would you like to ask people in the comments below, Space? I think the obvious one is, what do you think they're going to do this year? Or what are you expecting from this year? That's the obvious one.
Kind of wondering, do you think they're going to, do you think they're going to actually go forward with their whole playability thing? Or is it just messaging? Are they just going to keep doing the same thing? Or are they going to switch things up and finally start to make the game play a little bit better for the people already there?
I think mine will be, are you still a bit hopeful that, of the breaking of the dam scenario? I've been, look, again, I had multiple devs that, one of the devs called it the silver bullet. Like he literally was saying server meshing is held up because of that. And once server meshing gets in, you know, essentially the floodgate's going to go open. And that's what I heard from a couple of different devs. So it was one of those things we'd theorized, right? And people, of course, just crazy. But obviously, it was good. It was good to get it reinforced from devs themselves that there was a lot coming after it gets out. So yeah, I guess what I'm saying. That's the question aside. I'm hopeful of that, but I think my kind of takeaway from this year is I'm hoping the dam breaks. I think that's what I would like to expect this year. I want the dam to break.
I just hope we finally pass that milestone with server meshing.
Yeah, that's the same thing.
Just a shift.
That's the same
shift.
Similar thing. So yeah.
I don't need a dam break. All right, they could keep the little trickle through the floodgate. That's fine. Do whatever you will. The people need their water over time. Right. Just like. I like to see fresh water.
I'm going to do a ship giveaway. Anyone that can give me a really good picture of Space Tomato on a wrecking ball, like the chick from that song, yeah, you get yourself some kind of free ship. I don't know. I just want a really cool,
respect, man.
Yeah, that'll look awesome.
Miley Cyrus, an icon.
Yeah, Space Tomato on a wrecking ball, like a tattoo. All right, that's what I want to see. Anyone that does a real good one, I'll give them a ship.
Are you saying it has to be a literal tomato riding a wrecking ball?
No. Space Tomato on a wrecking ball.
Me? So they got to get a full body shot.
Yeah, full body shot. Yeah. You know, just draw him like the Hulk or something. You know, like big muscly man coming in on the wrecking ball. I don't know. It'd be funny. A bit of laugh. Anyway.
Of course.
All right. Where can people find you on the interwebs, Space Tomato?
Just search in wrecking ball and I'll pop it. No, Space Tomato on YouTube you can find me. Got a couple different channels. One for like main kind of, you're going to mainline that stuff. That's the good stuff. Have it on Saturday night, 10 to 20 minute videos. Second channel, Space Tomato 2 with podcast and long form deep dives. Third channel is gameplay. So you can get some Star Citizen gameplay because we do try to play the game. Besides that, I stream on Twitch and you can find the podcasts on any audio platform like Spotify and stuff. That's about me.
All right. With that, then, don't forget to like, subscribe, ring that notification bell, and thank you to everyone that went the extra mail on Patreon at the end of the video. Right, with that, then, he's been Space Tomato. I've been Execute. See you, citizens.